Okay, we'll now go to our next committee meeting. It's Community Economic Development. Michael Lillquist is the chair.
Thank you. Our committee has one item before us today. Joining me on the committee are Councilors Vargas and Murphy. This item is an ordinance amending both Title 15 and Title 19 of the Bellingham Municipal Code, and it's regarding an exemption for impact fees and utility system development charges for qualified low-income housing projects. We have before us a proposed ordinance that authorizes the city to waive up to 80% of transportation, park, and school impact fees and utility system development charges for qualified low-income housing projects. There's a staff memo. It has basically two parts. One is to describe how the waivers will be applied and what projects could qualify, and then some financial projections. So here to discuss that today is Mr. David Stallheim.
Thank you. David Stallheim, Community Development Block Grant Manager. About a month ago, we came to you and talked to you about this proposed ordinance and asked whether or not the council was interested in pursuing this, and you said go for it. And so we have prepared the draft ordinance. As you had mentioned, it does cover both impact fees, parks, transportation, and school impact fees, as well as system development charges on our water, sewer, stormwater systems in the community. The ordinance that we've drafted has the Community Development Director, after consultation with the departments, to grant the exemption up to 80% for any of those projects that are on the annual action plan approved by City Council. So these projects have already come to City Council. You've seen it. And so the Community Development Director, Planning and Community Development Director would be authorized to grant that. We also see that there's a potential that there might be projects that are not on the action plan. There could be private development projects, and so we have a process that would allow those applications to come in too, but they would go to City Council. So the City Council would see any project that had not already been vetted through your process. The exemptions in this ordinance are not automatic. There are criteria that are built within the ordinance. The applicant, we're looking at other financial issues, whether they've looked for other funding sources, the financial hardship to the project, the impact on public facilities, and consistency with plans and policies related to low-income housing. Any exemption that would be granted would have to have a covenant that's recorded that says that if it ever comes out of affordability, low-income affordability, then they would have to pay the fees in effect at the time of that conversion. So if a project comes out of affordability in 30 years, they'll have to pay the impact fees that are in effect in 30 years. And so somewhat of an incentive for people to keep the project in affordability. As part of the process developing the ordinance, we've consulted with internally with all the departments. This is part of the process of the larger development incentive package that Tara and Darby have brought to City Council. We have expedited this one off the list because we have a current project in the application stage that is in need of some funding assistance, some financial assistance that this project would bring about for you. We have also consulted with the school district, because the school district has to actually approve any school district impact fees. School district asked for some changes within the ordinance, and we have incorporated those changes that they suggested. They also would want to review projects on a case-by-case basis. So they're not granting a blanket exemption for projects, but people would apply to the school district for the school impact fee exemption. Right now, we do have 195 units that are on our action plan list. The agenda bill said 196. I forgot one of those units was acquiring an existing scattered site housing for Culture and Community Land Trust, so that wouldn't be subject to impact fees. So we actually have 195. The projects include Catholic Housing Services for Farm Worker Housing Project, Mercy Housing Northwest, Senior Housing, downtown Pioneer Human Services, 50 units there, Northwest Youth Services, 10 units, and Culture Community Land Trust, 5 units that they have to develop a senior housing project. As Mr. Lillquist mentioned, we do have a fiscal impact in there. The one project that is in permit stage right now, the impact fees for that, impact fees and system development charges are $526,632. The 80% exemption would take off $421,306 off of those charges. Just as a point of note for that project, we have over $1.5 million into the project, and those charges represented 34% of the money that we're actually loaning. So in respect, we would give them money and then take money back, kind of thing. And so we actually sometimes do interfund transfers where checks aren't cut and things like that. So we've drafted the ordinance. We'll be glad to answer any questions. I will also mention that we try to make sure that our affordable housing providers were in support, and hopefully you received letters. The ones I've seen include from the Housing Authority, Culshan Community Land Trust, Catholic Housing Services, Mercy Housing Northwest, Pioneer Human Services, and Bellwether Housing have all written letters that I've seen that should have come to the mayor and council. If there's any questions, I'm glad to try to answer.
Committee members, any questions? Vargas?
No questions. I have received a lot of letters in support of this, and I move that we pass the ordinance for the exemption of the impact fees for qualified low-income housing.
We have a motion to recommend passing this ordinance tonight. Is there any further discussion? I'll take Roxanne first.
I just want to say I'm excited and I highly support this.
Mr. Hamel?
Probably just overlooked this, but are there any transit proximity qualifying criteria in this ordinance?
There's nothing in this, but the applications that we get, the competitive applications have requirements for it, and every one of these projects are within transit distance.
Thank you.
I have a question. With regard to the financial impact, is averaging the overall estimated impact by all 195 units, I'm coming up with about $8,000 per unit, and I try to guess what it costs to build an affordable housing unit. It seems like we're talking about cutting the price by around 5%. Did anyone do kind of on an average per unit subsidy? You know, what is the size of this? Impact fees, aren't much more than $10,000, $12,000 for any development per unit.
Yeah, so the one project, 50 units, the impact fees and system development charges are $526,000, so a little bit more than $10,000 per unit.
$10,000 per unit.
Yeah, so we anticipate that with the portfolio of projects, we're thinking that it may average about 50 units per year. So some years will be a little bit larger than others, but looking at the amount of funds we have in the levy and our financial things, that's what I'm projecting is about 50 units per year.
Any further discussion? Okay, we have a motion before us today to recommend that the full council pass this ordinance tonight. All those in favor of the recommendation signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I agree with that. So we have this evening, I'll bring forward a unanimous recommendation to the council to pass this ordinance. Thank you very much, Mr. Stahlheim.
Thank you.
I believe that ends the committee.
Thank you, Michael. We'll now